All aboard everyone and welcome to Hype Train, the show where we get hype at some upcoming video game releases. Today, we're taking a look at Resident Evil 7, the fourth survival horror game in the Resident Evil series. Now, it may seem weird to you that I'm saying the seventh game is the fourth scary one, but if you take a look at the other core games, you'll understand what I mean. See, Resident Evil has been going through a bit of an identity crisis ever since Resident Evil 4 released all the way back on the GameCube, and it's caused a divide between the developers and the fans. At some point, I'll probably make a video that goes more in depth on this subject, but to give you the gist of it, Capcom, the publishing company, realized that their games sold better when they focused less on horror and more on over-the-top action and gunplay. For example, although Resident Evil 5 is arguably the most hated game in the series, it's actually the best-selling game in the whole franchise. I would speculate that Capcom was more than happy to stay on board that action-packed gravy train, but it seems that after both sales and reception for Resident Evil 6 were, to put it mildly, lukewarm, Capcom decided to hit the reset button on the series, so just like 4 before it, Resident Evil 7 seems to be taking the series in a new direction, and I personally could not be happier with the change. That's the first point I wanted to cover today. Even though Resi 7 is the 7th entry, it's most likely going to be remembered as a game of firsts for the series. The change to a first-person perspective is going to be one of the biggest things, of course, but if we take a look under the hood, I think we'll see a lot of other new features and ideas as well. It's difficult to go into detail about all these changes since the game's not even out yet, but stay a while and listen, and I think you'll find that there's more going on here than just a change in perspective. One of the biggest reasons that I'm getting excited for this game is because it looks like it's going to be a lot more focused than the past few titles in the series. So, what do I mean by focused? Well, from looking at the video playing in the background, what kind of game does this look like to you? I bet you would say the game is something along the lines of a first-person horror game, maybe even horror survival with crafting and puzzles thrown in for variety. So, it's a scary first-person game where you have to occasionally think abstractly. That sounds simple. It's easy to pull off, and most importantly, it's focused. Now, let's look at Resident Evil 6, which, in my opinion, was a jack of all trades, but a master of none. The game had 4 campaigns with 7 playable characters, and each campaign had a different playstyle it focused on. The Leon campaign had the survival elements of the older games, the Chris campaign was a third-person shooter, the Other Guys campaign, whose name I can never remember, had shooting as well as giant monster fights, sort of like in Resident Evil 3, and the Ada Wong campaign was centered around stealth and light puzzle solving. The entire game just screamed of too many cooks, and as a result, it felt unfocused and messy. I can't speak for you all, but I would prefer a game that does 1 or 2 things really well over a game that has a bit of everything, but none of the things it has are particularly good. I'll use Mario Kart as an example for simplistic but good game design. So what exactly do you do in this game? Is it a high-speed action-based cover shooter? No. Are you rescuing the president's daughter from vaguely European zombies? Not exactly. How about doing some quick time events to punch a giant boulder into a volcano? Not even close. You don't do any of that over-the-top stuff in Mario Kart. All you do is race around in a circle and occasionally throw a turtle at somebody, and I love it for that. Sure, the game has a lot less features than Resident Evil 6, and there is a lot less variety, but who cares how much of something you have if none of it's good or fun to play? I know I'm harping on this a lot, but darn it, this is something really important that a lot of game developers need to pay attention to. Would you rather have a cheeseburger or 40 pounds of manure? Sure, you'll technically be getting a lot more manure than you will cheeseburger, but if you stop and think about it for a minute, the only thing all that extra manure would do is cause you to stink more and be socially awkward. Let's bring this convoluted illustration in for a landing, and I'll end it by saying that sometimes less is actually more. Speaking of working with less, I really like how the game has been able to strike the delicate balance of allowing the player to feel in control of the character, but to still be completely powerless and at the mercy of the world around them. One of the ways that game developers used to make their games scary was by making the controls obtrusive and difficult to use. The first Resident Evil's control scheme was actually dubbed tank controls by fans because of how difficult it was to turn and move around. When you saw a monster and wanted to run away, you couldn't just mash the sprint button and hightail it out of there. No. Instead, you had to do something stupid, like hold down the X button while you lightly tap the R2 trigger and then circle strafed with the analog stick to turn your character around. It made playing these older games absolute pains, but it really did heighten the tension because you could never react quickly to the dangers around you. A lot of modern, scary games, such as Dead Space 3, have lost some of their scariness purely because it's too easy to move around enemies when they try to attack you. When you can combat roll everywhere like a fancy gymnast, it really does lose a lot of the tension. Fortunately, Resi 7 seems to have found the happy medium between player control and helplessness. This is done by giving the players the same controls that they would have in any sort of modern game, but then the control is countered by making the rooms that you're located in cramped and claustrophobic. It doesn't matter how good you are at 360 no-scoping. If you're in a 4-foot wide hallway and giant monsters are blocking both exits, well, you're dead. If you look at some of this gameplay, you can see that your character is literally trapped inside of someone's house. Think about the hallways in your house. Are you and the rest of your family able to walk past each other at the same time, or is it too cramped? Now picture that the other family member you're thinking about has a rusty shovel and is trying to hit you with it. Would you be able to backflip out of the way, or would you have a shovel in your face? This sort of environmental design reminds me of two other very popular horror games, Outlast and PT, which were both known for having good controls, but for also placing the players into horribly cramped environments. If Capcom is taking notes from these two other blood-curdling titles, then I'm sure I'm going to be absolutely terrified when playing the newest Resident Evil. And while we're on the subject of being hit in the face with a shovel, let's talk about the new enemies in the game. I really like, or rather hate, the new enemies because it seems like you can't actually kill them. Unkillable enemies have been in Resident Evil games before, but now it looks like these unkillable characters are some of the main antagonists in the story. In the demos that we've seen of the game, you're being chased by this grouchy old man who not only shrugs off being shot to the face, but he also taunts you and makes threats while you're unloading a clip of bullets into his throat. We've all been so conditioned by modern games to just shoot the thing until we solve the problem, but when it looks like that's not going to be an option here, we'll just have to learn to become creative, to conserve our ammo, and to not cry much when you see the guy on fire and you think it's gonna kill him, but instead he strangles you while he's on fire and the skin is melting off his face. Good gosh, I'm gonna pee myself while I'm playing this game. Wow. I'm sure there will be regular-ish enemy types in the game as well, but if Resi 7 is already throwing unkillable foes at us in what I assume is one of the first levels, then I cannot wait to see what they're coming up with for the later portions of the game. I also want to mention that you aren't able to pause this game when you pull up a menu to solve a puzzle, so make sure you are absolutely certain that there's not somebody or something sneaking up around the corner while you are busy. And now for the thing I am most personally excited about. It looks to me like Resident Evil 7 is completely dedicated to the singular concept of scaring your pants off and slapping you upside the face with unspeakable horrors. Look at what we've covered so far. We've got first-person perspective, so as to better get the scary stuff right in your face. There's also at least 3 unkillable enemies who are hunting you down while you are playing. The rooms are incredibly small, so you're not going to be able to juke your way out of any combat situation. And last but not least, you have to use your brain to solve puzzles. Thinking is truly the scariest enemy of all. Now that I'm saying all this game reminds me of another title called Amnesia: The Dark Descent. It's a game with a similar concept, and check this one out if you hate yourself and want to pee your pants. Getting back on track, all of these things do sound terrifying, but one thing that I have not mentioned yet is that Resident Evil 7 also has full virtual reality support. This is the rancid cherry on top of the zombie sundae. I do not own a VR headset, nor do I want to, because having this guy 2 inches in front of my face is not a world that I want to live in. However, if you do have a VR headset and want to know what kinds of scary games you should play on it, check out this stupid video where this ugly guy makes wisecracks that talks about scary stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure what his channel name is. I think it's Carpet Shop or something, but you should totally check him out and let him know that I sent you. So when we stop breaking the fourth wall and look at the sum of Resi 7's parts, I personally think that it's going to be a well-polished and terrifyingly good game. Of course, Capcom is the developer of this game, and they don't exactly have the most consistent track record for making games that are good, but hey, I like to remain optimistic about this kind of stuff. Let's save being bitter for whenever we think about how much money we paid for No Man's Sky. Hashtag dated 2016 joke. So finally, here's to hoping that Resident Evil 7 is not merely a good game, but an inspiration for horror game developers everywhere. If this game comes out and does well commercially, then maybe people will start to realize that you don't need to make action shooter games just to be successful. Shake up the established formula a little bit. You might find a new masterpiece or a new genre in the making. So fingers crossed that this game is good and not a burning pile of zombie kittens. And that marks the end of today's video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and be sure to let me know if you're excited about this game too. Also, if we can take some time for a few more shameless plugs, you should hit up that subscribe button, and if you want to be part of the Barbourshop crew, you should also ring that bell so you can stay up to date with the new videos. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm completely famished, so I'm gonna go make myself a couple of Jill sandwiches. See you later.